Test. Test. 1 2. 1 2. Test. One, two, test. Test. 1 2. 1 2. Test. Oh yeah, it's working. Do 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 do. Do. Going live very soon. We're live.
You're actually live?
We're actually live.
How many people are watching?
I don't know, because I don't know how to work Twitch.
How do you find out?
I don't know how to...
I can look. Oh. Where'd you get this song from?
Yeah!
You haven't tweeted.
I did, didn't I?
When?
27 seconds ago.
It's not come through, really.
Get ready. Whoa!
Alright, I see it. Doesn't say.
tune. I don't actually know if I'm allowed to put that in the stream. I'm gonna get banned from Twitch. I think I'm good because it's Creative Commons. Well, what other tunes we got on here? For anyone that's here already, I'm gonna get started in like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm gonna go through the like basics of how to use the Web MIDI API and try and get to work with this launchpad. But I'm just waiting because I said I'd start at 2 p.m. So you gotta have the joy of listening to some horrible midis. The most advanced Twitch setup ever created. Oh, got someone in the chat. Big fan. Can I request a song or is that subs only? Request away. P Wood. What do you want? I'm only allowed certain songs though. Oh shit. Woo! Oh, I can't handle it. It's like the Really Steady Cook theme tune. Gonna get banned for get DMCA takedown for the Really Steady Cook theme tune. Let's go. Alright. I have no idea who's on the stream. Probably no one. So I don't know how to work Twitch. But let's start. Okay. So let's start with MIDI. So MIDI is like a way of communicating between like keyboards and controllers, something like this. This is the launchpad MIDI, mini even. So they're pretty expensive, like 80 quid I think I got mine for. But you might have seen these before. They're used for music. It's got 4 different lights, so you can go from yellow, orange, red, and green. And you typically use it with like Ableton, so you can see like a keyboard setup with the launchpad, and you can use it for like sequencing, playing different songs, different like samples and things like that. So this is a MIDI controller. So MIDI in general, I don't really know much about it, but I think it's like a kind of, it's like a protocol that lets you send messages to different software or maybe even different music devices and get them to play different sounds, different things like that. So there is a Web MIDI API, and this is so you can like plug in via USB. I'm not sure if you could plug it in with anything else. Probably just USB. And directly use MIDI controllers and MIDI devices. So currently the support for this isn't very good. I think it's only in Chrome. I'm pretty sure. It looks like Chris from Google is one of the people that made this draft. It's only an editor's draft. So it might not even make it into like full browser support. But yeah, not planned in Edge. They're not even considering it in WebKit. So, but if you're gonna make some kind of web controlled Ableton kind of software, you might be alright with it just being in Chrome. Although that's a bit kind of shit because I don't know. It'd be nice if it worked in different browsers, so you could just like run it in Firefox or whatever. Right, so the API is nice. I hope you heard that. The API lets you do different things. So mostly it's just like the input and output. So let's get started with that. This doc's quite cool actually. It's got some examples. So I'm gonna grab this bit. So the way you access the MIDI API stuff. So my setup here is I've got a HTML document, and that is open here. I'm gonna add a script tag. I'm gonna put all my JavaScript into that. So let's just check that's gonna work. Hello. So main.js. Okay, so I've got script tag in my HTML file, and then it's linking to this. So when we refresh, cool. So we got hello world. So there's this navigator. Like I'm not sure what that is. Like a global object or something on in the browser. So we can call navigator.request MIDI access, and that's gonna return what seems like a promise. But it returns two things, which is kind of confusing. But we'll go with it anyway. So if it fails, then it'll call this one. If it succeeds, it'll call this one. So on MIDI success or on MIDI failure. So we can add functions for both of those. In the example here, it's just got you can store MIDI in like a global object. So let's go on MIDI success. Yes, MIDI is ready. I'm gonna get rid of that for now. And on MIDI failure, I don't know if it actually sends back any errors. Oh yeah, it does. So you can get the error message there, which should be useful. So we'll have like an error message. So we can catch those errors. So MIDI error, and then I'm gonna add that to the console log. So all I'm doing at the moment is just getting calling it at its like basic level, and then sending through some data. So that seems to be working. If I unplug, so I'm currently got the launchpad like plugged in, but I don't know what happens when I unplug it. So let's try that. Okay, so it still works anyway. So the failure is probably maybe if I don't really know how it could fail. Maybe I should read the spec, but even if it's not plugged in, it'll still do a success. So this is kind of just like, is the API ready, I guess, rather than is the MIDI controller ready. So if we go, so the next thing we can do, so MIDI controllers are kind of interesting because we can get information from it when we press buttons, and we can send information to it, but it doesn't really have a sense of like state that's linked to the browser. So if I send things to the MIDI controller, it's not going to be linked to the API at all. It'll just stay on the controller. So that's something to keep in mind with sending data to it. So if we have a look at this example here, which is kind of filthy, but when we get the MIDI access, we can do dot inputs, and that gives us a list of inputs that are connected currently. So let's do that. So MIDI access. Just gonna check if Anne asked another question. Probably not. Says let's just log out MIDI access, I guess, first, so you can see what that brings back. So this brings back like a MIDI access object, and you've got inputs, on state change, which I think is so you can detect when things are plugged in and unplugged. And you've got outputs, and there's this sysx enabled, which I can't remember what it does, but might get back to that if it's important. Probably not. So I'm gonna just grab the inputs first. So I think you have to call it as a function and keep looping through. It's kind of a really odd API. Yeah, so you have to loop through. So if we grab those. So because you could have more than one MIDI controller connected, I think this is so you can like make sure that you're connected to the right one. So here, it's kind of weird actually because there's two. I've only got one MIDI controller plugged in. So I'm gonna unplug and just see what it does. Oh shit. Don't know what that is. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so it seems like the laptop has some kind of MIDI thing connected by default, but I don't really know what that is. So now when I've just plugged in the launchpad and it does a nice little animation. Oh shit, a screenshot of the page. Now it comes up with launchpad, so I don't know if this ID is unique, but I'm going to be using the name as the kind of like identifier. So let's store create an object called launchpad. So we're going to store different bits of information in this, because at this point we're going to get all of the MIDI inputs and all the MIDI outputs. We want to define like an object that's going to store the launchpad stuff. So let's simplify this console log. So I think if we go input.name, it should just bring back the names. Okay. So now what we could do is, I'm gonna just do that. So I just changed them to let and const. If you're not familiar with those are different ways of declaring variables in ES6, I think. Const means that this variable input won't change. Well, it will throw an error if I try and write to it. So if I do this, it should throw an error. Yeah, so we got assignment to constant variable. So this variable should never change. So it just helps you out if you accidentally try and assign something to it again. And then let is like a scope. I'm not going to get into that because I don't really fully understand it, obviously. Right, so I'm going to say if input.name is equal to launchpad mini. I'm not sure if I want to do the whole thing because it might not. Other people's launchpads might not match, so I'm going to do dot contains. I think this works. Wow. So let's see if this gets called. That's not good. Oh, is it includes? includes. Okay, cool. So at this point we know that we've got our input, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do launchpad.input, so assigning to this variable up here, I'm going to put this input into it so we can use it later. So now if outside of here I do launchpad, so launchpad, I'm just going to put a string as well, like that. And if you put commas in the console log, you can like have multiple things logged to the console. So I've got this input that I can use later, and this isn't an object, so I can call .input, and I can do stuff with it. So that's cool. I'll get to outputs, but let's start reading some of the inputs because I think it's more interesting. So this is the bit where it gets kind of confusing, and I still don't really understand how. So the messages that come from the MIDI controller aren't like a typical JavaScript API. They're different hex values, like 3 hex values. So if we grab, all right. So yeah. So on each, so we've got this on MIDI message event listener that we can use to listen for MIDI messages. So what we could do here is, for instance, do launchpad.input. I'm going to actually bring that out down here, and then add event listener MIDI message. Yeah. And then I'm going to call, well for now I'm just going to put it in a function like this, and I'm going to log out that event. So when MIDI message fires, which is when I press something, it will call this function and send an event through, and then I'm going to console that event. So hopefully this works. Yeah, okay. So I'm pressing down and up, down, and then up. So it actually fires multiple times. So it's sending messages when you press down and when you release, which is pretty useful for like sequencing and music, because sometimes you might be holding things, or it's important to get the beat right, I guess. So like it really does matter how long you're holding onto the button, and if you're like tapping, you might do like staccato, like stabbing samples or something. So what does this bring back? So we get a MIDI message event. And I think this is quite a lot of stuff that normal events have. It's quite small actually, boost it up. So what we want is the data. But we probably could use some other stuff as well, but the data is the important bit. So we've got 3 values, and what I'm going to do is just console log out down to this data point so we can compare it when we press the different buttons. So if I go event.data, refresh, right, so if I'm on this top left button and I press down, we've got 144, 0, 127, and then I release and it's 144, 0, 0. So the second item in the array is the position, because if we go here, it's 1. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The 0 means it's it's pressed up. Wait, I'm confused. Let's start again. So you press down, it's 127, and you release, it's 0. So then we can use that to detect whether it's been pressed down or up. I'm not really sure what 144 does. All I know is that if you press any of these ones that are, so A to F, and any of the ones in the middle, they're all 144, but these top ones are 176. I don't know why, but it is different. So what's interesting though is I think we've got like 100, this might be why, there's 101s down here, and so I might want to use like 104, but this one is also 104. If we look at the second value, if we look at the second value here, so the only way we can determine between those 204s is this 176. So this is like 104 G. So G is 104 and 144, and then the top one is 176 with 104. Just feel like I'm saying numbers now, but so let's ignore the first one for now, and we're gonna use the second and third to work out which position we've got, and then whether we've pressed up or down, which is pretty useful. So what we can do is, so we're gonna store event.data in a variable, so we're gonna call this MIDI data maybe, and then we can access each bit. So I'm gonna call, so the second part of the array is going to be the position. Put that in there, and then we've got whether it's up or down. So pressed, that might go is pressed is equal to MIDI data 2, and I'm going to say if it's equal to 127, yeah, 127, then it is pressed. Oh, maybe we'll go is pressed down. That makes more sense. So if it's 127, then is pressed down will be true. Otherwise it'd be false. So then we can kind of detect whether or not it's up or down. So let's try that. So now we've got 0, 1, 2, 3. So this seems quite nice, because then you could use all the inputs here, and you could like create a loop that creates, so you know where each position is. But the really annoying thing is, if I press here, this is 0. I press A, it's 8, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait. Yeah, 8. But it started at 0. 0, 1, 0 to 8. You'd think this would be 9, this one here, but it's actually 16. I'm not actually sure why it's 16. That might be like a MIDI controller thing. But that goes from 16 all the way up to 24. And then this one's 32. So it's like 0, 16, 32, 48, 64, 80, 96, 1, 1, 2. So if we want to have this as if it was like an XY grid, so if this was like 0, like this way was X and this way was Y, this would no longer be 0, this like X1, Y2, because it's 16. So there's some like mapping to do, and I think it's probably like an easy way to do this with maths, but the way I did it before was kind of like dodgy, but I'll show you that anyway. Maybe someone can tell me a better way of doing it. Right, so that is the inputs, which is pretty good. So we've got that coming out. So now what we're going to do is the outputs. So so we have this loop that gets the inputs, and then we're adding event list now. We could separate this out later, but for now I'm just going to stick it all in the same place. So I think like we did before, we can do outputs like that. So let entry, and then access that again. So I'm just going to console log these out as well. Right, so we got the two outputs. like we had the two inputs. I'm going to do the same thing to work out which one is the launchpad. So what I'm probably going to do now is bring out a function that says is MIDI item launchpad. So I've got this kind of logic here that I want to use in two places, and I might make it more complicated if I wanted to. So I'm just going to bring it up. So I'm going to send in the item, and then it'll return whether or not it thinks it's the launchpad. So now we can do this. So we're going to send through that input as the item, and then we're going to do the same for the output. So like that. Cool. And I'm just going to move these down here as well. So we've got our two loops. I keep like gesturing to the screen, but you can't see that. Two loops going through the inputs and outputs, and then I'm going to console out the launchpad object and add those event listeners. So now if we look at the top here, we've got input and output. Those are more easily available, so I don't have to keep looping through those MIDI inputs and outputs. So now the really like annoying thing about sending messages back to the launchpad is that it has to be sent back in this 3-part array again. As you can see here on the spec, it's showing like a middle C. So like if you were sending it to a piano, this is the data you'd send to make it play middle C. This launchpad lets you send messages to it, but it only lets you control the colors. So you can turn the color off. It can go to yellow, orange, red, or green. So that's what we're going to do now. So we've got our output. We can do, so I can't actually remember, might have to look at my notes, which is, so I've cheated and I've done a little bit of stuff already. So I'm just going to have a look at, so, here we go. I'm just gonna steal this because fuck it. Okay, so I've got this function, so I'll talk it through. Okay, so I think you're just sending it. So the last thing that we're going to be sending through is the color, and those are mapped to different numbers. So I'm going to grab that from my notes. So the last number in that array that we're going to send to the MIDI controller is the color. So we've got red, green, orange, yellow, blank. The second one is going to be the number, so like that number that we saw when we pressed. And then the first one is whether we're at the top or not. So it's kind of like the stuff that you press for the input data is actually used. The first two are the same as the output. So if I go, so maybe if I just send through, so what I'm going to do first is get the input and send it back with a color. So if I take send message, for instance, and I want to send through launchpad.output, so when we get a MIDI message come through, I'm going to actually grab, So I'm going to send a message and have the first 2 bits go through. So if we take MIDI data as the message, and I'm going to change the color to red. Okay, I don't know what, oh, okay, it's working already. I don't know if you can see that. Is that working? Yeah, I think that's good. Cool. So because the input data is giving me those first two values, I can send those back as the output, and I'm sending red as well. So now I've got this going, which is pretty good. Basically finished. This is it. And these ones work as well. Cool. And so what's quite interesting now is what I'm going to do is close the tab. So I've closed the tab, and there's no JavaScript running with the Web MIDI stuff, and it's still there. Can't press the buttons anymore, but the lights are all still there. So this MIDI controller doesn't understand when it's disconnected, or and the state isn't linked in the browser. It's all in the pad. So to get rid of this, I have to disconnect it. Cool. Right. So when we press our input, we've got it changing to red. You could change that to green as well. So let's try that. And you could do the other colors as well. So what we're going to do now, because that's kind of the basics really in terms of the launchpad. When I was making stuff, I didn't need anything more than that, but I think there might be some other stuff as well. So it looks like there's connection stuff, so you know when an item has been connected or not, which might be useful if you've got a UI and it says connect your MIDI controller, and then you could plug it in, and then it'll detect it and then start running your application, which might be useful. What we're gonna do instead is have a think about making this a bit. What my idea is to make a small JavaScript library that simplifies a lot of this MIDI stuff, so we could send a message for instance, launchpad dot send message, and we could be X. So I'm thinking of this pad as in this way is X, so the top horizontal row is X, and this way is Y, going vertically. So this top left one would be 0, 0. This would be 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, and then this one would be yeah, so it'd be 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. So this is 0, X 0 to 8, and this would be Y 0 to 8. I don't know if that made any sense, but I want it so I can reference it like that, because if we're going to be creating some kind of visualizations, then it's easier to think about it in terms of a grid instead of some kind of, I don't even know what that is, the 0 to 816 thing is confusing. So my end goal really for this kind of wrapper is to be able to do something well, it wouldn't go to 10, sorry. It'd be 2 and then 8 and then red. So I want to be able to do something like that. That'd be really nice. And then I'd also like to be able to do something like launchpad the an event listener or something that's add event listener, events, and then have this simplified to be something easier to work with. I'm going to take a Pepsi Max break, sponsored by Pepsi Max, official sponsor. Right. So I'd like to have something that's like launchpad event listener events, and then we could have data that comes back that looks kind of like x0. So like for this button press, I'd expect it to come back with like a kind of position. So maybe it'll look like something like this. And state. So this could be up or it could be down. Or maybe held. But I'm not sure about that. Might be a bit more complicated. So like I want this event thing to come back and say that I've pressed, something's happened, and maybe that's up or down, and where it is. So like x00, or maybe it's like these ones up here, which aren't on the grid. And I was thinking of using like circle and referencing them, because we got 1 to 8, so you could have circle 1, 2, 3, 8, and then on the other side A to H. So that's kind of what I want in terms of the events that come back. Then it's going to be less about Web MIDI, because then we can just use this as almost like a user interface. Then we can start thinking about the logic for the sequencer, which is fun. But at the moment it's kind of like messy because we've got to think about like 127 and things like that. So if we can hide that away in the library, that'd be really cool. So right, so we've got so I want to tidy up some of this, I think, first, because it's a bit confusing. So I don't know whether to put that at the bottom or at the top, like, because it's the first thing that happens. So I might put it at the top, so that makes more sense maybe. So yeah, so maybe we wrap all of this in a function itself. Launchpad init launchpad. So I don't really have any experience of making like a library like jQuery or something, so maybe you should explore that. But for now I'm just gonna have this big function, and maybe you could use classes for this as well. I'm not really sure what the best would be, but let's just throw some together and see where we get to. So so we've got this input output. So I think at this point, so we've looked, the MIDI API is successfully, we've got access. So this will probably determine if the browser has support as well, actually, thinking about it. I think at this point we can determine whether or not we've got the launchpad. So if we say if launchpad dot input and actually, so let's return early. So if we say if there's no input or if there's no output, we're gonna return with an error message. It's just like launchpad couldn't, yeah, maybe we'll go couldn't detect launchpad. Because we need the input and output really. Maybe you could use one or the other, but for what I want to do, I'm going to decide that if I can't get an input and I can't get an output, then I'm just going to return early. I'm just wondering if I could do this in a nicer way. For now, that's what I'm going to do. So let's try that out. So Does that work? No. Alright, let's do this. Let's actually return an error instead of just a string. Oh, it's not working at all now, which is interesting. I'm just going to plug it back in because I don't know why. So it's not calling our MIDI success anymore. Is it? Oh, so I didn't call this function, so I wrapped it in this function, didn't I? So let's call this function. Cool. And yeah, so now if I unplug it, so MIDI's ready, but then we're throwing this error that says couldn't detect launchpad. So that'd be useful if I tried to plug in something that wouldn't be compatible with this library, I guess. Rather than it just failing and you know understanding why. So we kind of want to have this return those error messages. So this object that we have, which is quite this launchpad object, I think we should return this when we do init. So I think init launchpad should, if it's successful, return the object with inputs and outputs. Maybe I think that's a good first step. And then if it's not successful, then return a string of an error message, I guess. Let's go with that. And so then, so if you're not familiar with then and catch, what I'm going to set up is a promise. So I'll just quickly show you that. This is a good resource, at least I think it is. Well, MDM in general is a good resource, but hello. So, oh, this probably isn't a good resource actually. What the fuck is this? I don't know whether I should be explaining promises, but I could do that in the future. If anyone's interested, this might be a good place to go. I'm not really sure, it looks complicated. What I'm going to do is use an example, and then if anyone's interested, they could ask me what promises are, and I could go into more detail. For now, I'm going to do this. So you could return a new promise. And so what we've got here, so when you create, I guess I'm explaining promises now, aren't I? So when you create a new promise, you can give it a resolve and a reject. So resolve is like if the promise goes well, then do something else. So we can do .then, and then reject. We can then, it gets caught by a catch. So for instance, I'm going to make this function return this early so we can see what happens. So if we do resolve hello there, and then reject, oh no, something went wrong. I'm going to comment that one out for now. So if we just do a resolve, so when I'm calling this function init launchpad, it returns a new promise, and so then when I call it here, then I can do .then to catch the resolves, and then .catch will do the error messages. So I could put error console.error, and then maybe reason's actually a better name. Reason. So let's see if that does anything. Right, so I did resolve, and it resolved hello there. and then we got dot then, it comes out here. So like that. Nice. Okay. Oh yeah. So if it, what's interesting about this bit is if your code errors, it also will be caught by the promise. So I've missed a comma there, and it got caught in that error, console error bit. So we could put launchpad error. So if I remove that comma again, oh no, it doesn't. I'm talking shit. Never mind. Right. Talking shit. So what we have now is a way that we can have like this function. What I want it to return is that launchpad object with the inputs and outputs and the events. And then if anything goes wrong, I can catch the error as well. So I'm going to wrap this promise around everything for now. And right. Yep, that's cool. So what I'm going to do is if we get a failure, I'm going to rename these as well, because I kind of like to call, I'd like to call this MIDI MIDI access failure. I just like using the weird handle instead of on. I don't know why. So if we get a failure, I'd like to, instead of consoling there, I'm going to do reject and then have it reject the message. And then I don't actually know if that's going to work, but we'll see. Handle MIDI access success. Okay. So, and now if it works, if it's all good, we can send back, return, resolve, launchpad. So if it all works, then we're going to resolve launchpad. So I'm going to remove some of the console logs because it's getting confusing now. Let's get rid of that. Actually, let's leave that one in. So this is like MIDI API ready. And then let's get rid of this one for now. Okay. So at the very top, now we've got this function that we can call. And we can do dot then, and it brings back launchpad. Wow, it's the launchpad. So we're at the same point before, but now we can like separate this code out, which will make it a lot more easy to understand in terms of what we're doing, because it's like it would be nice to just have logic for like the sequencer, and then logic for handling this interaction between Web MIDI and the controller. Right. So we've got a way to so we're currently outputting the inputs and outputs, which isn't great. We kind of want to output I might use classes for this actually. It might make more sense. I'm just going to take a quick break, I think. So I'm going to test out the AFK device. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's try it. Alright, I'm back. I think I've come back. Don't really know because there's no like indication on the screen. But okay, so what we kind of want this to return is, and I might do two like separate libraries. So I have one that kind of wraps the MIDI API, and then one that simplifies like this launchpad API. So at this point we've got inputs and outputs. I'm gonna work on it here, I think. So if we take this out, so then all this function here is doing is requesting MIDI access, trying to find the launchpad, and then returning the inputs and outputs, which I think is quite a useful function to have. What I might do is pull out these. So this is kind of like a launchpad wrapper almost, and then we want to make something that uses launchpad specific kind of logic. So I don't think is that still going to work. So we've got launchpad.input. So in theory, no. Okay, so we've got send message. Oh, right, so we'd have to send message through as well. Yeah, let's do that. So we could take that out as well, maybe, and bring that into here. So that'd be like launch. That probably makes more sense. Okay, so that's still working. Right. So we're gonna have this send message functionality, but we're missing like this part where you take the X and Y positions. So let's try and start that. So really we need to work out how to map 0 to 8 and 16 to whatever that was to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm going to start trying to do that. Map number to grid. So I'm actually going to take this out of it and work separately. Gonna have map number to grid. So if I gave it if I gave it 0, this should equal X, Y, and that 0 is coming from the inputs. So if we look at here, so 0 is X, Y, 0, 0, and this 1 should be X1, Y0. This should be X0, Y3, 0, 1, 2, 3. So 48 would become 0, 3. It's pretty confusing. So if I got the number 48 back, it would become still X, like that. And then this here, for instance, 71 would be 7, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 7, 4. I think I got that right. So how do we do that? So we're gonna have a number that comes in. If the number is less than 7, then we know, like for this first row, y is 0, and x actually maps perfectly, so you've got x 0, and this is 0, 1, 2, 3, so x is actually mapped correctly on the first row. So if we know it's less than I guess equal to 7, then we'll return. So I'm gonna do this. So let's go with that. Return x is the number, and then y is 0. And then I'm going to just return an empty as like the kind of our progress. So that didn't work for some reason. So this one should, I'm not sure if you can do that, can you? I'm just going to console log each of them rather than trying to do equals, because I don't think you can equal both. So the first one that comes back is right. If we put in 2, that would become 2 as well. So if it's under 8, then it's going to map up perfectly. So anything after that, our y is going to go up. So the next number we're going to put in is 16, and that will become 0, 1. And put 48 back in. 3. So the next one we're trying to do is 0, 1. So I can't remember what logic I used for this, so I'm going to dip back into my notes, because I'm pretty sure this is like a really wrong way of doing it as well. So number, yeah. Right. I'm going to try and talk this through because I'm not sure if it makes much sense. So if it's less than 8, I might put that in actually. Less than 8, then just return 0. So what we're doing here is modulus. So we're saying the number we put in, say we put in 48, how many 8s go into, or is it, how many 8s go into 48? I'm not sure if it is that. Is that division? So you do 48 modulus 8. How many? Oh, I think it's the remainder. I'm gonna look it up. So MDN modulus. Modulus. Oh, is it modulate? Oh, so yeah, it's the remainder. I don't know why I'm calling it modulus. It's the remainder. So it's after dividing, after putting in 8 into 48 as many times as possible, what is left over? So what's the remainder? So if I do 9, how many 9s go into 48? Do this. 5, and then there's 3 left over. I think that's what it means. So the x will be that for some reason. I can't even remember why I wrote this. Yes, if anyone knows a better way of doing this, please tell me. I think that's because they're all 8s. So you got 0 to 8, 16 to whatever 16 plus 8. This kind of gives you where it is on x. And then for y, we're doing, so math.floor will round it down. So we do, how many 8s go into 48, for instance? 5. 5.3, and then we round that down, so how many whole numbers go in? So it's 5, and then we divide it by 2. I don't know why I'm doing that. But it works, so we're gonna go with it. Not good. So yeah, that now works. So I'm wondering if I can just remove this, if that works. That does. Yes, I don't need that first one. Okay. So I guess the only important thing to know is that we're taking the numbers from the pad, this grid, and turning them into this XY coordinate grid, because this is not easy to work with. I can't remember why this works, but it does, so we're going to go with that. So converts numbers on pad into XY grid. Okay, so we've got this function that does that. We're going to move that. So yeah, so where to put that actually. Let's just stick it out here. I'm probably gonna think about the best way of, I might look at how you write libraries. Like I think you stick it on the window or something like that. Kind of want to do it in like a Node version, so I have like separate files and exports and things like that, and use classes. But I think I might have to use Browserify for that, so I'm just going to keep it simple for now. Or maybe it isn't simple because it's a mess of code. But so what we're going to do is, instead of sending back that position, we're going to send back, so we're going to console log position. So now, and what I'm going to say is, if it's pressed down, I'm going to send back the string down, and if it's not, I'm going to say up. So what we should have now is, so if I press, oh shit, let's get that right, I should have like a linter or something, so 0, 0, so that kind of works quite nicely. So 7, 7 over here, 0, 0 over here, 0, 7. So this will just make it easier to like think about this grid, because before it was just a mess of different numbers. I think it's probably easier to think of it in a grid. So this is x 1 0 1 2 3, and that's like that. And now we've also got down and up, which is quite useful. Okay, so what happens when we press these circle ones though? So it's coming back with X and Y, but it shouldn't be, because they're not in the grid. They also come back with just dodgy numbers. So let's refresh it. Okay, so what we're going to do is to say if so I'm just going to console out that MIDI data again, because I forgot what the difference was. Right, so on these it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense for these circles. What we want it to do is bring back circle and then 1, for instance. So what I'm going to do is say, has top button been pressed? And we know that because, as we said before, if you press this button, it's 176. If you press any of the others, it's 144. So we can detect that. So you can say, is the top button being pressed? So is that equal to 176? So if that's true, so I'm going to make a function that map message to position, maybe. So this is the thing that's going to return those XYs or like the circle. So we're going to say, I'm going to send in a message. I'm going to say position. Oh, so we already called it position. So I don't know what to call it, so I'm just going to call it that for now. New position. So it might be that we don't need that position above anymore. Yeah, it might not. So send that through. So okay, new position. So if we, so at some point we'll return message. So if it's the number at some point, we'll send back this. Map number to grid, sorry. Message. This one's still working. These aren't going to be working. So if okay, so now we probably move our logic into this. So we've got so I'm going to rename these position and then let's actually call this message. I'm going to remove that for now. I'm going to do, instead of map message to position, I'm going to do map data to message. Because well, I guess it's a message, isn't it? But won't worry about the name for now. Right, so you send in MIDI data. If has top button being pressed, then we know it's not going to be on the grid, so we could return something else at this point. So we could return, for now I'm just going to return circle. Yeah, true, maybe. How do we know though? So that's a good way of indicating that it's circle at the top. But how do we work out the ones on the right? I'm just, why is, oh yeah, so that's MIDI data. MIDI data. So that's good for working out the circles, and then, but we still got the problem with these ones on the right. So let's go back to console and the data. So I think you look at this one, there's probably again a really nice way of, I guess we could say if it's like exactly divisible by 8 or something. I don't know, that wouldn't work because it'd be 16. So you got 8, 16. Yeah. So before, I think I just had an array of all of the ones. Yeah. It's kind of filthy, really. But we could come back to this. I don't know if there's a better way of doing it. So I'm gonna say that when I press these circle buttons, we've got the second item. It gives us that number, so we can say, we know it's the top, and then we can map it to 1 to 8, for instance. So if it is the top circle buttons, we're going to take the position and map, and this should map. So 104 will map to 1. So if let's go with that. Did I do wrong? Oh, okay. Position. Yep, so that seems to be working quite well. We've got these. So we know that it's a circle, and the position is Y. So maybe in fact, instead of returning this, we could say this is in the grid, true, and then the position is this. So then we have more of like a consistent I'm going to call this number, because I've done map number to grid, and then I'm going to call that number, and then this number as well. So that bit in the, I don't know if it is position, we'll leave it that for now, I guess. So now I can say like it's in the grid, or it's a circle, and then the position, which is probably a nicer, you can see for the circles it's just saying 1, but then for the grid it's giving the X and Y. So, and I spelled position wrong. Right, so this is good, but we still haven't solved these ones on the right. These should be circles as well. So, again, I don't know if there's a better way of doing this, but I think we just check that. So I think you can do object, no, I can't remember what it is, has key. So object has key, has own property, is that the one? Yeah, I think so. So we could do, so if right circle buttons, this function here, has one of the numbers in it, so has own property, then we know. So we're checking for the top buttons first because they have the same. So G, if you remember before, G and 1 have the same number, 104, and the only thing that we can do to determine the top ones is with that first number. So we can check those first, and then there won't be any repeats. So there should be a unique number after we've checked the first ones. So now we can do circle true and position right circle buttons number. So let's try this out. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. There we go. Cool. Alright, so then we've got this function that maps. Yeah. I'm going to move these. Again, if anyone knows a better way of doing this, it's probably like really obvious, but I'm like completely missing it. So then we've got a way of mapping the data to like a message that's nice to use. this is cool because now we can use this in our application. But now we want to work out how to do the opposite. So I've got one of these objects and I want to send message to the launchpad. So we need to make a similar function that does the opposite. So map message to data. So I might rename this to MIDI data as well to make it more clear. MIDI data. And this is map message to MIDI data. So we're going to give it a message. So I wonder if we can work backwards. So if grid, so message dot grid. Yeah, I'm just gonna. All right. So if message dot grid. We're doing the opposite of this, which I really don't remember this bit. So if it's an object, alright, yeah, that's horrible. Yeah, so it's pretty horrible to be honest. Function map grid position to number. Yeah, rename this to grid position. So kind of doing the opposite of the other function. So converts grid position xy grid position to pad number into grid position. So we're kind of doing the opposite of before. So we take the X position and we're adding it onto, we're doing the opposite of this to get that Y number back, and then we're adding it to grid position X. I don't really know, like when I made this before it's just like fudging the numbers so to make it work, and there's some maths behind it but I don't understand the maths, so if anyone understands the maths let me know. But for now that'll do because that works. So I'm just gonna put these just to make it a bit more clear what it's doing because I think it's confusing. Okay. So this means we can send grid position stuff. So if it's grid, then we're going to return map grid position to number. And we're going to give it message.position. That's not going to do all of it though. So we've got the two things. So we've got the data that we're sending, so like the value, so we have to send that through as well, value, and also might want to make a constant here, so const top circle button. I don't even know what this is, so we're just gonna go
I'm gonna keep it as magic numbers. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. So I'm gonna create some constants that, because at the moment we've got numbers like 127, 176, and they don't really mean anything without knowing the context. So I'm gonna store these in some variables at the top. So top circle button, and we've also got pressed down value. I'm going to call this value as well. So pressed down value was 127. So now it's just clear in the code what does that mean, pressed down value, and then top. It's a bit longer, but I feel like it makes more sense. So then we can say, we can send that back. So this would actually be the grid, maybe not top circle button. Is that a terrible name? Probably a terrible name. And this was 144, I think. Oh, we're not sending that data back anymore. Let's just send this back. Because I think it was 144. Yeah, okay. So we've got 144 now, which is not. So we can send that through. I'm just going to put some line breaks in to make it easier to read. Cool. Nice. I'm going to move these out as well, because I think we're going to use these in a bit. So I'm going to have all my constants at the top, maybe. So, right, value, cool. If it isn't grid, then, so maybe we should check if it's top. Oh no, so if it isn't grid, it's circle. And we could, I think we can check them in any order now actually, but let's do it in the reverse order maybe. So can you check the keys? So I want to check these instead. So the values even has values object JavaScript. That's kind of horrible. I mean, let's go for it now. So we go if, so we're going to get the values of this object, right circle buttons, and then we're going to say, is there an index of the message dot position? So if we press these and it comes back with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, then, so I might put that in a variable to make it clearer, and I might do it for here as well, is grid position. And then I'm going to do is right circle button position is equal to this. So I'm not sure, but I think you could do includes now instead of index of more than. So I'm going to try that. So we've got all the values, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Does it include, so what the message we're sending in, is it one of those? I'm just going to console log and see what happens. Wow. And then if it doesn't work, Wow. Yeah. Okay. Oh. I'm not actually calling this, am I? So let's have a couple of test cases, I guess. So, 0, y, 0, and then we're gonna have circle A, and then circle B, and then this is also going to be oh no, this is position, sorry, so it's circle true position A, true position B, and then grid true position X, Y. Yeah. Okay. So it should be, the first one should be working. I'm just gonna comment those out and just so it's easier to read. Is it coming back with the, oh yeah, I think it's working. So then we'd send through the value as well. So send the red, which wouldn't be red at this point, it'd be some of a number, but okay. So, oh, should it be console logging that? Oh, I put the comma in the bracket in the wrong place. Cool. Okay, so that would be replying the right thing. So then let's do right circle button, which is yeah A, and this one's 1. Sorry. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's working now actually. So we could do return. How'd you get the? I guess I could. This doesn't feel very nice, but what I'm gonna do is. So I could do, instead of includes, I could do find and then do value equals position, and if it finds it, then I'll return that. Maybe let's just see what this does. So instead of checking if the key exists, I'm just going to try and find it. Okay, so oh, that's doing the same thing. I want the index of it really, so let's leave it as it was. Do index equals object. Find index. Can you do find index? Find index. Yeah. And do the same. Value equals. There's probably a better way. In fact, I think I did this before. Map. So what did I do before? Get key by value. Did I just have a separate function? Get key. Right. I'm just gonna grab this function because it seems like a better way of. So like this helper function here. So this function finds the key when you have a value. So I'm gonna use this instead, and then we send in the object and then the position, and then we can return that. Cool, 8. Was that right? A to 8. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let's try B. 24. Yeah, cool. So now we've got the right buttons. And now we're going to do the bottom ones. So instead of it saying, so I need to move that as well. So instead of undefined, we want it to say, I think we just do the same as before for, so if it's not those, then it's the top buttons. This is top circle button position, and then this is also top. So let's try this out. There you go. Looks better. Cool. So, oh wait, that's just the inputs. 104. Yeah, it's 1. Okay, cool. So if we do G, yeah, it's 104 as well. So we need to return the arrays again now. So not top circle button, and then value, and then top circle button value, yeah. I guess we could error at this point, but I'm gonna leave that for now. Cool. So, and we need to turn these into integers because when we send it to the launchpad, it doesn't like strings really. So let's do pass in. Is it pass in? Like that. What is it? What is it? Oh, it's lowercase. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. Cool. That's coming back. So the last thing we need to think about is converting these colors back. So we get this message. And I'm wondering if, what do we send back here at the moment? So we're not sending back the up and down. So I think when we do this part, I think we also should send back the up and down as like the data that comes back as a value. So when we do map MIDI to data, I'm gonna also my computer's like taken off. So state is equal to is pressed down. So it's down or it's up. I'm just going to stick that in each of them. Okay, so now I should be sending back the up and downs as well. Yeah, there we go. Which is nice. I kind of want that to be value actually. So we can have values that come in, and then when we send them back, we'll have values as well. So for instance, what were we calling those? Yeah, so instead of having it separate, let's put it inside of the object that we give it. So let's go red and value green and then value yellow, or maybe blank. Let's go blank. So cool. So now it's going to convert the value. So I think we could do the same as we did before with the get key by value. So we'll say don't really know what it's called. I'm gonna put something for now because I don't know what it's called. Oh no, so it's called value, and I guess we'll grab it from data something. Let's call it something. I don't know. So send. So, and if there isn't a something to send, then we'll return early because we don't have any data to send. So if I send some malformed data, so maybe we'll console error for now, and say it's something. No, sorry, message dot value is not a valid color. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if that's too like high level at this point for that error, but we'll leave it there. Okay, so that should have committed that. 120. I'm missing something. Missing after argument list. Oh, okay. Just missing these. String. What? Value to string. Did I not send anything through? So I've got an error which is cannot read property toString of undefined. So is this undefined? So message. Message.value. That's weird. Oh, I forgot to put the object in. So this is colors. So I guess we could call this color at this point. Yeah, whatever. I'm going to use the American color. Blank is not a valid color. Was it the other way around? Oh, I think this is a string now as well. Is it? Oh no, we don't need to, because this is already the right way around, so we can go colors. Oh. Blank is not a valid color. I thought that was in there. Oh, it's an object. Yeah, that's fine. I don't know why that's not working. message up. So you got blank. Blank is not a valid color. What's going? If I do blank, does that work? Console log colors, and then maybe red. Right, why doesn't blank work? Blank. Oh, it comes back as 0. Oh, that's annoying. Because you can't do that, can you? If color, so what happens if I just put some garbage in? What does that come back as? Is it undefined? Yeah, so if we could do if type of color isn't undefined, is undefined even, then it's not a valid color, and then that should work now, because it was matching 0 as falsy, so it was saying that 0 is false, but that's a valid number, so we don't want to do that. Cool. Right, so now we've got the data coming back in this kind of like, so you're saying, is it grid or is it circle? The position and the value as like a JSON object, and then we can also send a JSON object back and actually send that data to the board. So I guess the last thing just to do is just to check that that works. So let's grab all of these, and where we had our output, here we're sending a message. So yeah, I think we could instead of console log, let's do, I think that's it, and then yeah, let's try that. So this should light up 0 0 B G, and I guess let's try like 5 all red, hopefully. Ooh, 5 didn't work. Oh, did I leave a variable in here? Something. Okay, this should be color. Let's do it again. Yes, nice. Cool. So now we have like this kind of way to send information and receive information in a kind of standard JavaScripty way, maybe. Whereas before we had to send MIDI messages. So I think next time I'm going to try and format this in a way that makes more sense, so maybe a class, and then have it as like its own separate file. I also need to work out a way to make it like namespaced to a window object, so then it doesn't conflict with any other libraries. I think that would be a good idea. So then we can have it's like launchpad core library that lets you send these JavaScript these objects back and forth. Cool. Yeah, so I feel like that was pretty dry. That was the first time I've done a stream, so if there's any feedback, that'd be really useful. Maybe it's too long, probably too long, but I'm gonna keep doing them and try and get better at it, because I think it's good fun. If you've got any input, oh yeah, I'm gonna also be pushing this to GitHub as well, so you can see that I've got another branch, and that's where I made some progress before, but I'm gonna be doing all the stuff for the stream and pushing it up here. So you can like add issues if you want to like ask me a question. You could also tweet me if you want. I'm there as well. Yeah, so thanks. I'll probably do one soon again. Right. See ya. Bye.